What's up everybody, it's Tanner from Built Not Bought. Today I'm going to show you how I built this farmhouse table from start to finish. I hope you enjoy. Alright, so that edge that I just jointed is now going to go up against the fence on my table saw. I have it set at 9 inches, and that's going to be the thickness or the width that I want this board to be. So I'm going to lock everything down and then run this through. It helps to have either a helping hand or some feather boards for running long stock through the table saw. This just helps you keep everything tight up against that fence so it's not moving in and out as you push it through. Alright guys, the milling process is complete. This next step I feel is one of, if not the most underrated processes in building high quality furniture, and that is just your board or plank layout. So I spend a good amount of time studying the grain of each piece and trying to decide what numerical order looks the best. I try and make it so that if there's a straight grain, it matches up with a straight grain. If there's some movement, I try and match that movement across boards. And it seems like it's a small thing, but in the end, when you get a nice tight glue up to the point where you can't even tell that there's 5 planks in here, it almost looks as one. Now obviously there's some sapwood and some heartwood that makes it pretty clear that we have multiple boards in here. But we do our best to match these seams up, and that's what I pay the most attention to. I think I have these laid out the way I like them currently. So then what I'll do is just take a pencil and I just number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I know that these boards are my top, and this is the order that they go in. And then the last thing that I'll do is write inside, outside on each seam. And I'll show you right now that these look pretty darn good as is, but if your jointer isn't exactly 90 degrees, I mean, we're talking if it's off by a fraction, your seams will not be as clean as I would like them to be. So here's kind of a close-up of that grain that I was talking about. Notice how on the left and right side we have the grain going in basically the same vertical direction, and our spacing between each grain here is very similar, and I try and match that across. Here they're a little bit tighter. It's not perfect here, and there's some color difference, but they're a lot tighter here, and then over here they're that similar size and thickness. And these first three actually butt up really nice with each other. These last two, or if you want to count this third one as well, need a little bit work. So that's where I'm going to do the inside outside method. So what I do is just take a pencil and I'll write inside, outside. And this tells me that this face right here will be up against the fence of my jointer. And then this face will be facing outside when I joint it. So then if there's any inaccuracies in the fence of my jointer, they will cancel each other out because we're flipping the board inside and outside. So look at this gap here between my 4th and 5th plank. It's tight, but since my seam isn't exactly 90, there's a little bit of a gap here. So I think this one between 4 and 5 will be a perfect example of how this method works wonders, and these two are going to butt together a lot tighter than this. Alright, here's 4 and 5. After I did that inside-outside method, there's no gap, and we're looking good all the way across here. So next I will throw a clamp on this just to hold it in place, and then I will draw my lines for my dominoes. So off camera I punched holes with my domino into these top planks. So on the right of this image you see my domino already glued in, and that is on the #1 setting. There's no play at all, it's just a snug fit, and I glued all those in. I did 5 for each plank here. And on the left here, I'm just going to show you with the domino quick. It's a loose fit. There's room for you to slide it back and forth a little bit, which gives you a little bit of leeway when you're trying to assemble everything all at once for the main glue up. Alright, so successful glue up. Everything went together really smoothly. Those dominoes are a lifesaver when it comes to alignment and getting everything exactly where you want it to be. I realize that that's a luxury tool, and you could use biscuits or you could just go straight glue like I mentioned earlier. Alright, here we go. So you can see my squeeze out all the way across, all the way down, and then here's my clamp arrangement. So I started with just the 3 Bessie clamps on the bottom, and then I came, after I snugged it with those 3, I came and put additional clamps across the top in the alternate direction. So here it gives me an even clamping pressure. If I had all of them at the bottom, it would want to bow the whole table in kind of a U shape because all that pressure is pulling down. When you alternate, it alternates that tension from the top to the bottom, and it keeps everything a lot flatter, and it'll give you a better glue up in the end. I finished cutting all of the tops and bottoms of my legs as well as that cross centerpiece. For that centerpiece, just subtract the thickness of your top and bottom plate. In my case, I believe they came out to be like 3 1/4 after I had planed them all down. And that'll give you what you want to aim for, at least what I aim for, is a 29-inch total height of your leg. And then with the addition of your top on top of that, you'll get about 30. In my case, it'll be a little over 30, but I'm okay with that. Next, what I'm going to work on is that center beam, and I'm going to do a mortise and tenon to connect the 2 legs. And basically the point of this beam is it's going to keep those legs from bowing out or in away from each other and hold them rock solid, straight up and down. To cut my dados, I'm going to use this crosscut sled and a dado stack. If you don't have a table saw or a dado stack, you can easily cut them by hand with a Japanese pole saw or a dovetail saw, whatever you have. You can easily cut them with hand tools as well. Since I have this, I'm going to use it, and it should go a lot quicker. Alright, I was able to finish the crossbar here. The dado stack works extremely efficiently. The finish that it leaves is not the best, so I'm going to come and clean up these edges with a chisel quick. But I got the rough outline all finished up, and a little bit of work with the chisel and maybe some sandpaper, and we'll get these smoothed out, and then we'll work on the mortise for these to go into. Alright, I got everything dry fitted here. I'm really liking how it looks. I think it's ready for a glue up. Hopefully the glue up goes well. I know with all these angles it can get a little tricky at times, but I'll make some clamping blocks to hopefully help out with that. And fingers crossed everything goes smooth. I'm going to start on the next part of this table, which is going to be probably the most difficult and technical portion of this, and that's the breadboard ends. I've got 2 pieces of ash that I've cut down. I left them a little bit longer than the total width of the table because I can always flush trim them up afterwards. But let me show you kind of how I'm going to set up my breadboards. So here I have my breadboard end stood up on center. I found the middle of it. Let's see if you can probably barely see that. I made a little mark here, and then my tenon or my mortise here is going to be a 1/2 inch wide. So then I just took my marking gauge, set it up so that these 2 teeth right there, those 2 teeth are a 1/2 inch apart from each other. Then I scraped it all the way across, and then I just filled in my little groove with a pencil so I could see it a little easier. Alright, so off camera I drilled all the holes in the breadboard end. There you can see them. And now I'm going to attach these to the tabletop. And at this point, it's pretty important that you give yourself some reference lines. That way when you pull this off to drill the holes in the tenon and you line it back up when you want to actually put in the dowels, everything lines up the way you want it to. So I'm going to tap this on with my mallet, and then I'm going to put little marks with a straight edge along here just so I can realign it once I'm all finished. Then I'm going to take them right back off and drill the holes in the tenon. So right now I'm just using a brad point bit and tapping it with this little mallet, and that's going to leave me a spot so I know where the center of the hole is on the tabletop. Then I'm going to pull these breadboards off, and then when I go to drill this hole, I'm actually going to move this brad point bit back like a 1/16 of an inch. And that's going to make it so when I drive that dowel in, it's going to kind of go in at an angle and then pull this in tight to the tabletop. Here you can see my little indent from tapping on that drill bit earlier. So that now when I'm ready to drill the holes in this tenon, what I'm going to do is actually take this drill bit and bring it back just a small amount, like a 1/16 to 3/16 of an inch, and then drill the hole. And what that's going to do is create what's called a draw board, and it's going to make it so that my tenon and my breadboard end get squeezed really tight together once we put that dowel in there. Okay, I've got all the holes drilled, and now we're going to start boring out all of them. But it's super important that you leave the center hole and you do not bore that one out at all. This one is going to be a solid connection. We're going to glue it completely solid, and the rest of these are going to be like a floating dowel system. I'm just going to take an auger bit like this. This one is ridiculously long, but that's what I have. And I'm just going to go side to side with it, and I want to elongate them from left to right, but not from front to back at all. So just right to left. And here on the right you can see what I want it to look like, and this is obviously just a plain hole, so we're just going left to right with it. I'm gonna get a rat tail file and do a little bit more on the inside of here, but that's about the size that I want to elongate all of these. So I took my dowels, I'm using 7/16 dowels by the way for this, and I just took them to my sander to kind of give them a little bit of a profile, just to make it easier to drive it through. And when you're putting in your dowels, your center one you're going to glue up completely, but all these other ones outside of the center one, you're going to pound in 3/4 of the way and then just put a little bit of glue on the top so that it just bonds to the top side of this breadboard. You don't want to have it bond all the way through to the tenon and the back side of this, because that defeats the whole purpose of giving us those elongated holes for wood movement. If we have that draw bore effect, so this will probably go in at a slight angle and then hopefully straighten out, and then in theory it'll pull this breadboard tight and keep it tight to the table itself. So the center pin on these is going to be glued solid. Everything else I'm just going to put a little bit of glue around the very top part. That's why I didn't drive these two all the way home. And I'll probably leave them a little bit proud and then either sand them or plane them off. But this center one, the one that I'm going to do now, I'm going to glue all the way down, because this is going to be our anchor point and we're going to be allowing movement on either side of this center beam. Good morning everybody, it's a new day. I just pulled these out of the clamps, the legs for the bench that I'm building. I'm going to quick run them through my drum sander just to make sure everything is nice and flush and square. Alright, I got the bench all finished. It's ready for the Rubio that I'm going to put on it. It's going to, of course, match the table. We're using chocolate Rubio monocoat, and I think it turned out really great. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please like and subscribe. I'll be producing more content like this in the future. I really appreciate it. We'll see you on the next build.